Access now blocked. The White House preventing House Republicans from getting the tapes of the special counsel's interviews with President Biden. What it means to the GOP probe and how the Justice Department is defending the White House's move. Former President Trump's one-time personal attorney, Michael Cohen, is back on the stand this afternoon after more than 2 hours of cross-examination before the lunch break. Our legal correspondent, Arlene Richards, brings us more highlights from Cohen's testimony. Making sure that non-citizens don't vote in federal elections. That's what a House committee is investigating today. How inaccurate voter rolls can hurt America's elections and also immigrants. President Biden reportedly planning a dramatic response to the U.S.-Mexico border crisis. A research fellow tells us he's doing it with the election in mind, but that it won't convince voters. Congress is digging into the Chinese regime's political and military control over developing nations. More on how China is using infrastructure projects to expand its influence. And QR codes will be required if you want to go around certain areas in Paris during the Olympic Games. This novel measure raises serious concerns for some legal experts. Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Chris Beers. A historic shift in generations of U.S. drug policy. The Justice Department formally moves to reclassify marijuana as a less dangerous drug today. The proposed rule recognizes the medical use of cannabis and notes it has less abuse potential than some of the nation's most dangerous drugs. But the plan does not legalize recreational marijuana. Instead, it reclassifies the drug from a Schedule I drug alongside heroin and LSD to Schedule III with ketamine and some anabolic steroids. This follows a recommendation from the Health and Human Services Department, prompted by President Biden's 2022 review. Attorney General Merrick Garland has approved it. The DEA will now take public comments. And the White House saying tapes of President Biden's special counsel interview are privileged and thus out of Republicans' reach. It's sparking former President Trump to again decry a two-tiered justice system. Joining us now live is NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao. Good afternoon, Iris. How's the White House dealing a blow to the GOP probe today?
Good afternoon to you, Chris. So according to the Justice Department, President Biden has now asserted presidential privilege to bar House Republicans from obtaining the audio recordings of President Biden's interview with Special Counsel Robert Hur. And today, it comes just hours before House Republicans were going to vote to hold Attorney General Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress for refusing to turn over these materials. And Garland and the White House defending President Biden's actions, saying it's to protect law enforcement files. Watch.
This is one that would harm our ability in the future to successfully pursue sensitive investigations.
The Attorney General wanted to make sure that that law enforcement files like these must be protected.
But the White House sidestepped questions about whether politics were at issue. Special Counsel Hur, who investigated Biden's handling of classified documents, described Biden as an elderly man with a poor memory in his report, explaining why he's not recommending charges against the president. Meanwhile, House Speaker Johnson today accused President Biden of being afraid to release these audio recordings. Watch.
President Biden is apparently afraid for the citizens of this country and everyone to hear those tapes. They obviously confirm what the special counsel has found.
Meanwhile, Trump's campaign responded today accusing President Biden of trying to use presidential privilege to run political cover for the president. Meanwhile, that's despite Trump has also repeatedly used presidential privilege to try to block Democrats from accessing records and testimony during his first impeachment trial. Back to you.
Well, let's see how Republicans will move forward with their probe next. Iris, what's Trump saying about his trial and what's new with the presidential debates that's going on?
Right, so former President Trump this morning outside of the courtroom in New York and said again that the current legal woes against him are political persecution. Let's take a look.
I'd like to be in these various states where I should be campaigning like anybody else. This is a Biden trial. This all comes out of the White House and the Department of Justice.
And Trump also just said in an interview that he has no problem with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. joining the debate with him and Biden, as long as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. makes the requirements. And that comes, of course, as we now have 2 debate dates already set between Biden and Trump. Back to you.
Iris Tal, thank you. Senators from both sides of the aisle shared their opinions on releasing Special Counsel Hur's audio tapes.
That kind of privilege applies to special counsel unless there is some acceptance of the rule of attorney-client privilege. I think it's the law statute, but they may decide, and I'd encourage them to be more open than perhaps the privilege would permit them to be.
Strikes me as bizarre. I think the most troubling part about it is that it demonstrates who was in control of the investigation of the President of the United States for misuse of classified documents. Apparently it was the President of the United States. Can you imagine having a criminal investigation where the person who was the object of that investigation could then limit the public access to the information that is used to basically acquit them or vindicate them? It just is a bizarre, strange abuse of the legal system, and frankly, I think it's outrageous.
Just put the shoe on the other foot. If you had a report, suggesting that President Trump wasn't with it, everybody would be, every media outlet in the country be yelling to release the tapes. Release the tapes. The American people need to hear for themselves and judge whether or not the summary by the special counsel was appropriate. Release the tapes.
Now to Trump's case. After a lunch break, Michael Cohen is back on the stand for more cross-examination from former President Trump's attorney. Cohen testified for over 2 hours this morning about various topics, including his frequent rants against Trump and his habitual lying. Cohen admitted he wants to get revenge on Trump and maintains that he lied to protect his former boss. Our legal correspondent Arlene Richards is here to talk more about Cohen's testimony. Arlene, good to have you. Cohen testified on Tuesday that he had a phone call with Trump about Stormy Daniels. But today on cross-examination, the defense raised a different scenario, talking about something else. What can you tell us about that?
Well, 2 days ago, he said he testified during direct examination that he had a phone call with President Trump and that he told him that the deal with Stormy Daniels was taken care of. But then today, the defense showed him text messages or information that he actually had a conversation with I'm sorry, I just want to check my notes here for a minute, that he had a conversation with Trump's bodyguard. And in that conversation, he told his bodyguard that he was concerned about a 14-year-old that had been prank calling him, and he wanted to know what to do about it. Now, both of these things happened on October 24, 2016. And the phone call he said he had with Trump happened on October 24, 2016, and this text message with the bodyguard happened on October 24, 2016. Now, Cohen testified earlier on Tuesday that he spoke to Trump at 8:02 p.m. on that date. And when they look at the text messages, the bodyguard told him at 8:01 p.m. to call me. So then they show a call log where at 8:02 p.m. there's a conversation for 1 minute and 36 seconds, which he had with the bodyguard on his phone number. So Cohen said that he didn't remember having a conversation with the bodyguard and that he believed that he had spoken to Trump and that he had talked to him about Stormy Daniels. Well, then later on, he testified that he didn't know about this prank caller. He didn't remember it because the prosecution had never showed him these documents when they had met. So his understanding was, based on the documents they showed him, that he had this conversation with Trump, but he didn't really remember. So now the jury has to decide whether or not he's lying or whether he really doesn't remember having this conversation with Trump.
Now, Arlene, going back to a little earlier today, the defense was trying to get testimony from Cohen that shows that he's out to get Trump, that he's out for revenge. They discussed Cohen not getting a position in the Trump administration. What are the highlights in that conversation?
Well, previous witnesses have testified that he was really upset about the fact that he didn't get a position in the White House. And actually, David Pecker testified that he was so despondent, he was almost suicidal about it. But he tested previously that, he didn't want to get in the White House. He said that he didn't want to be in the White House. He just wanted to be the personal attorney, and that he was offered a position, but that he denied it. So then they showed him text messages he had with his daughter in which he was very upset about the fact that he didn't get the chief of staff position. Now today he said that he didn't really want the chief of staff position, that he was just thinking that it would have been nice if they had considered him for the position. But I think this shows to the jury that he had some motive for wanting to get revenge. Now we have this previous testimony of him being so upset about it. We have these text messages between him and his daughter where he's complaining constantly about not getting in the White House. And so this is motive for him wanting to get revenge. And also it shows more of his contradictory statements. Now this afternoon, I'm assuming they might get to this issue of the business records and whether or not, Trump falsified the business records. And we're going to see how the defense handles that and whether they're going to show that he has more contradictory testimony.
It should be pretty interesting. Arlene Richards, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Preventing non-citizens from voting in federal elections. The House Administration Committee today probing how to restore Americans' faith in the election system. Chairman Brian Stile questioned a witness about controversial ballot drop-off boxes.
Something could happen to those ballots. It could be stuffed with ballots. Ballots could be stolen.
So if Washington, D.C. Board of Elections, if this is how they're operating their ballot box collection, less than 1 mile from where we sit right here, it gives me great pause that there's not any clerical errors occurring as to when they have non-citizens on the voter rolls in Washington, D.C.
The hearing comes just days after over 100 non-citizens were found on Ohio's state voter rolls. Ohio State Secretary says some of the registrations may be the result of an honest mistake due to language barriers, for example. The Secretary added that it's important to remove those individuals from the lists before they vote illegally, which can result in a felony. A witness at today's hearing said something similar when talking about the dangers of incorrect voter rolls.
Ignoring this problem ignores the harmful impacts to both our elections, but also to the aliens who are caught in the system breakdown. Because they have registered to vote, often at the behest of third parties or bureaucrats, these well-meaning green card holders face deportation.
If you want to see the full highlights from today's hearing, make sure to tune in to our evening news with Tiffany Meyer at 6 p.m. Eastern or 3 p.m. Pacific. Next, President Biden is reportedly planning executive action to shut down the U.S.-Mexico border once the number of daily migrant crossings reaches 4,000. NTD's Fiona G. spoke with senior research fellow Simon Hankinson of the Heritage Foundation about the motives behind the president's latest policy.
Back in February, a bipartisan border bill with a similar provision failed to pass the Senate. At the time, the president said he couldn't do anything about the border until Congress took action to pass the bill. Hankinson believes this is a bid to turn the election tide around for the president.
The Biden administration and President Biden have said all along that there's nothing they can do. They need more money. They need better laws. But what we know for a fact is that illegal immigration at the border was mostly under control under the Trump administration because of executive action, orders, and policies, not because of laws. The laws that are on the books ever since the last big reform in 1996 are perfectly adequate to secure the border. So the president is perhaps panicking because his poll ratings are down, and he is thinking he needs to do something to look as if he's trying to fix the border.
Hankinson says that President Biden has never had a good track record in keeping consistent with his announced policies, and that the move is not likely to sway many voters. He also believes that it would take a lot of work to reverse the border crisis, but that it is possible.
Politics and the election are what is motivating him at this point. Now, President Trump, if he's talking about ramping deportations up even to what they were in the Obama administration, we would be talking about 300,000 or 400,000 a year. Now, when you have a system that allows people to claim asylum and gets them due process, lets them go before a judge, plead their case, at the end of that system, the judge is going to make a decision. Are you yes, you have asylum, or no, you don't. If you don't enforce that decision and remove people who do not get asylum, then the whole thing is a joke. It's just theater. You have the rule of law. You have to enforce that law in the end.
With all of these migrants coming into America, there's also been concerns about voters and voter registration. Just recently, over 100 people in Ohio were found to have successfully registered as voters despite not actually being U.S. citizens. And now the Ohio Secretary of State, Frank LaRose, he's ordering these people's removal from the state's voter rolls. And he's also calling on the Biden administration to grant access to federal citizenship information. Does these issues with non-citizen voting have anything to do with Biden's decision now?
I wouldn't directly link those things. It should be both Democrat, Republican, Green Party, whatever party, should be in favor of enforcing electoral law. Only American citizens are allowed to vote, and I don't understand, other than partisan motive, why Democrats would resist efforts to make sure that people have some kind of identification. But we should all be interested in making sure that the voter rolls have integrity so that people have confidence in our elections.
As the border continues to see thousands of migrants crossing every day, it remains to be seen what concrete steps President Biden will take next. Fiona G., NTD News.
Combating the Chinese regime's Belt and Road Initiative, members of Congress probed overseas Chinese infrastructure projects and the damage it's caused developing nations. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has the details.
Combating the Chinese Communist Party's influence across the globe. This was the subject of a Thursday hearing by the House Select Committee on the CCP. Now, Belt and Road, or BRI, is a series of infrastructure projects in over 100 different countries across the globe. But it has saddled those countries with failed projects and billions in debt. Over the past decade, the Chinese regime loaned out over $1 trillion to developing countries, making it the world's largest lender. And this has led to a debt crisis in these countries, who are unable to pay back these loans. In many instances, the projects fail. The nearly $3 billion Coca-Codo Sinclair Dam in Ecuador, financed by the CCP, has thousands of cracks. The dam contributed to landslides and an oil spill that impacted thousands of residents. But the regime isn't just making highways, ports, and airports. They can be used as military bases.
Creating a debt trap, building infrastructure that could have dual uses, both commercial as well as military. And they're expanding their influence around the world and undermining the free world. They're a surveillance society. They oppress people. When people are in debt to China, the leverage they put on those countries is tremendous.
We should be offering competing terms. We should be getting into this because it's very important that the Chinese not, for instance, develop deep water ports that then they militarize that harm our national security.
The CCP is not acting as a creditor in good faith. They are turning those loans into forms of subservience by these countries and are extracting political concessions in lieu of economic ones.
I don't think any of us want to live in a world dominated by the Chinese Communist Party. So to the extent that BRI contributes to more Chinese influence and coercive pressure against countries around the world, that's not a good thing.
It remains to be seen how Congress will act and provide a better alternative to China's Belt and Road Initiative. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jack Bradley, NTD News.
When we come back, QR codes will be required to get around in certain areas of Paris during the Olympic Games. We hear from a lawyer about why this is raising red flags. And the Mirage Hotel and Casino on the Las Vegas Strip and its instantly recognizable volcano is soon shutting down after more than 3 decades in business. That and more.
The highest art is beautiful, breathtaking, timeless, and moving. Experience art with 5,000 years of history, inspired by the divine. Experience Shen Yun.
Do you know that Cars for Compassion is the best way to donate your car? Through this non-profit program, you can not only help us keep bringing the world independent and daringly truthful journalism, but also significantly impact the life of somebody who needs a vehicle. The Epoch Times fights misinformation and big tech censorship by being independent and unbound to advertisers. Every single contribution to Cars for Compassion is a powerful endorsement of our unwavering mission. All you have to do is go to carsforcompassion.org and let us know about your car, and we'll schedule a pickup time and email you a tax-deductible receipt. To do this, just click the link below, support truth, compassion, and hope. Donate your car right now at www.carsforcompassion.org.
Is deep-sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritang green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals, especially vitamins A, D, E, calcium, and iron. With natural processing and no harmful chemical additives, it has more than 90% concentration of omegas 3, 6, 7, and 9. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritang omega-3 does not smell of fish and contains no pollutants, so both adults and children can safely and easily consume it over a long period of time. Puritang green vegetable omega-3, greener, healthier, and more effective. Visit puritang.com to learn more.
Looking for a healthy and smooth-tasting brew? Drop by Days Coffee Roasters today and explore our wide selection of specialty-grade, small-batch roasted coffee. Home to North America's first enzyme-fermented coffee, we source a wide selection of specialty-grade coffee beans from around the world, and our baristas are ready to craft your customized brew. Visit Days Coffee at 28 North Street, Middletown, New York. Come experience a brew like no other.
Welcome back.
This is one of the key measures planned to secure the Paris Olympic Games. Each Paris resident or tourist wishing to enter certain areas in Paris will have to show a QR code and a valid ID to authorities. This unprecedented measure comes as the opening ceremony plans to welcome 300,000 spectators who will watch from the bank of the Seine. Every applicant for the QR code will be subject to an administrative inquiry, including a check of potential criminal records. The measure stirs concerns, though. For Thibault Mercier, president of a legal association, it's hard to imagine how police officers will control crowds coming in and out of these zones. His association is appealing to Paris Administrative Court to suspend the move.
It's going to take an incredible amount of time scanning all the QR codes of people passing by, and it's going to make life miserable for Parisians who will no longer be able to access their city.
He says this QR code reminds him of security measures during COVID, when privacy and freedom of movement were taken away.
During the COVID, we were given a QR code based on the fact that we had either been tested or vaccinated. Now it's exactly the same thing.
This measure might not really restrict terrorist acts, Mercier says.
The government has used all these new, highly intrusive technologies that go against the simple freedom of citizens to remain unidentified in their public space. They are going to be put in place to better control us. And we don't really know if that will work out. During COVID, for example, fake passes and QR codes existed and could be bought on the internet.
The QR codes can be obtained online, where residents have to give their address and tourists have to show hotel reservations. David Dives, NTD News, Paris.
The iconic Mirage Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas is closing after a multi-decade run, and the closely watched Walmart earnings report is released today. Here's NTD's Don Ma with today's Business Matters.
Thanks, Chris. To start off, the Mirage Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas is ceasing operations after 34 years. It's going to get transformed into the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino and Guitar Hotel Las Vegas. The Mirage will stop operating on July 17th to start the renovation and rebranding process. The new integrated resort will feature a nearly 700-foot guitar-shaped hotel at the center of the Las Vegas Strip. Mirage parent company Hard Rock International says it expects the transformation doubling the current number of jobs at the Mirage. The company also expects the property's renovation generating more than 2,500 construction jobs. Hard Rock plans to shell out roughly $80 million in severance packages for eligible employees who are staying with the property until it shuts down. Also, Walmart reported another quarter of strong results today as its low prices pulled in shoppers scouring for discounts with stubbornly high inflation. So the nation's largest retailer also offered an upbeat outlook. Walmart is among the first major U.S. retailers to report quarterly results. And the reason we're talking about Walmart is because it could shed more insight into how consumers are feeling within this economy. Americans have remained largely resilient in the face of inflation, but there are signs that shoppers are pulling back under the growing weight of higher prices and the higher cost of carrying debt. Prices remain elevated for basic items like packaged goods and rents remain high, and all this is sapping the spending power of millions of people. So, it is good to see that Walmart raised its full year forecast and reported better than expected first quarter results. It means that the consumer has not yet completely lost its spending power. All right, that's all from me, Chris. Back to you.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average topped the 40,000 level for the first time Thursday. It made its last leap of 10,000 points in about 3.5 years. Tune in to NTD's Business Matters at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. Thank you for watching NTD Newsroom. I'm Chris Beers. See you tomorrow.